It was supposed to be a celebration. A simple, joyful Sunday dinner at my parents' house to finally, officially announce our engagement. 6 years together, a perfect, pear-shaped diamond on my finger, a spring wedding already booked. My sister, Clara, had been oddly quiet all evening, pushing her food around her plate. She'd been distant for months, claiming work stress. I'd been too wrapped up in my own bliss to pry. Then, as Mom served coffee, Clara cleared her throat. Her hands, I noticed, were trembling. "I have an announcement, too," she said, her voice thin and high. She didn't look at me. She looked at my fiancé, Mark. A look passed between them, a silent, terrified flash of understanding that froze the blood in my veins. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The room erupted in confused, congratulatory noise. Dad beamed, Mom clapped. I forced a smile, my mind racing. Clara wasn't seeing anyone. "That's wonderful." "Who's the father?" I asked, the question dangling in the suddenly thick air. Clara's eyes welled with tears. She looked at Mark again, a desperate, pleading look. And he, the man I'd trusted with every secret, every dream, closed his eyes, as if in pain. "It's me," he said, the words barely audible. "The babies are mine." The word babies hit me like a physical blow, twins. The room fell into a silence so complete I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's smile died. I stared at them, my vibrant, artistic younger sister and the calm, steady man I was going to marry, and my world didn't just crack, it disintegrated. The affair, as they stammeringly explained through tears and halting apologies, had been going on for 8 months. It started when I was working late, building my own marketing firm. Clara had come over for a drink with Mark. One drink became a habit. A habit became a comfort. Comfort became this. They were so sorry, they never meant to hurt me. They were confused and caught up in feelings. The clinical, cold part of my mind noted the timeline. 8 months. That meant they'd been sleeping together while Mark and I were looking at wedding venues. While he'd been on one knee in the botanical gardens, telling me I was his forever, he was already sharing a bed with my sister. The betrayal was so profound it felt surreal. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply took off my engagement ring, the ring he'd placed on my finger just 10 weeks prior, and set it carefully in the center of the table, next to the pecan pie. It made a tiny, final click. "I hope you're very happy together," I said, my voice eerily calm. Then I walked out, leaving the sounds of my mother's weeping and my father's stunned curses behind me. The following weeks were a numb, grey haze. I moved into a corporate apartment, blocked both their numbers, and told my parents I needed space. The anger came later. A furious, white-hot rage that burned away the grief. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had woven a secret, second life using the threads of my own. They'd stolen my future, corrupted my past, and were now building a family on the ruins of mine. I would not be the tragic, discarded sister. I would be the architect of their consequence. My revenge would not be loud or violent. It would be precise, legal, and utterly inescapable. I started with finances. Mark and I had intertwined our lives meticulously. We had a joint savings account for the wedding and a house down payment. The very Monday after the dinner, I went to the bank. As a joint account holder, I legally liquidated it, transferring every last cent, $42,000, into a new, solo account. It was my money, from an inheritance that had formed the bulk of it. Next, I reviewed every shared utility, every subscription. I cancelled anything in my name that benefited him. I called the wedding venue, the caterer, the florist. I cancelled everything, citing infidelity as the reason. Most had morality clauses. I received nearly all our deposits back. I kept them. He could explain to his pregnant mistress why their babies wouldn't he have a college fund started with wedding savings. But financial disentanglement was just step one. The masterpiece would be social and familial. I knew my parents were trapped in a nightmare, torn between their devastated eldest daughter and their pregnant, shameful youngest. I decided to make their choice clear. I invited them to lunch, alone. I laid out a printed timeline. I deconstructed dates of my late work nights, juxtaposed with text records. I depulled from our family phone plan, showing calls between Mark and Clara that lasted hours. I showed them the receipt for the necklace Mark bought for me on my birthday, a necklace ID never received, but that Clara had been photographed wearing weeks later. I will not be in the same room with them, I stated, my voice firm. If you choose to host them, to support this pregnancy, to welcome those children as your grandchildren while treating the man who betrayed me as family, then you are choosing them. And you will lose me. Not in a dramatic, screaming way. I will simply cease to exist in your lives. You will not know where I live, if I marry, if I have children. I will be a ghost to you. It was a brutal ultimatum, but grief had made me ruthless. My mother cried. My father looked old. But they understood. They chose me. They told Clara that while they would always love her, they could not support a relationship built on such a profound betrayal. She would have to navigate her pregnancy without their open support or involvement. The family fracture was complete and of her own making. Next, I turned to our shared social circle. I did not post a dramatic reveal online. Instead, I sent a single, elegant email to our mutual friends, our wedding party, our colleagues. It was simple and unemotional. It is with great sadness that I must inform you that my engagement to Mark has ended. This decision follows the discovery of his extended infidelity with my sister, Clara, who is now pregnant. Out of respect for everyone involved, I ask for privacy as I navigate this deeply painful situation. I will be stepping back from all shared social commitments for the foreseeable future. The email was a grenade. It was factual, indisputable, and painted them as the villains without me needing to scream it from the rooftops. The fallout was instantaneous and absolute. Mark lost several key friends who were also business contacts. Clara was quietly dropped from her social committees. The narrative was set, they were the betrayers, and I was the dignified, wronged party. No one could accuse me of spite when I was simply stating the truth. The final, most satisfying act was professional. Mark and I worked in adjacent industries. He was a rising star at a reputable architectural firm. I knew, from years of pillow talk, about a project he was bidding on a large, city-backed community centre. I also knew, because he'd complained about it drunkenly one night, that his initial design had a minor but significant flaw in its load-bearing calculations, something he'd brushed under the rug, assuming it would be caught and corrected in engineering later. I anonymously contacted the city's Contract Oversight Board, suggesting they conduct an extra thorough, independent review of all finalist bids, specifically looking for structural compliance issues. I didn't name him. I simply planted the seed. 2 weeks later, his firm's bid was disqualified on grounds of potential structural integrity concerns. The project was his to lose, and he lost it. His professional reputation, already shaky from the social scandal, took a critical hit. The stress of it, combined with the isolation from my family and friends, began to erode the very foundation of his and Clara's love story. I heard through the grapevine, which I kept carefully tended, that they were fighting constantly. About money. About shame. About the fact that their entire relationship was born in a shadow, and now they had to live in the bleak, friendless daylight they'd created. The ultimate closure came 9 months later. My mother, honoring her word but still a mother, called me. Clara had given birth. Twin boys. She sent me a photo. I looked at the screen, at the 2 tiny, wrinkled faces. A part of me expected to feel a fresh wave of agony. Instead, I felt nothing. A vast, quiet emptiness. They were just babies. But they were also permanent, living monuments to the worst betrayal of my life. They would grow up knowing their origin story was one that broke their aunt and shattered their family. Their parents' relationship was built on a lie that hurt everyone they claimed to love. That, I realized, was their true inheritance. Not my anger, not my stolen wedding funds, but the inescapable truth of their beginning. I had taken everything else back: my money, my dignity, my family's loyalty, my social standing, and a piece of his career. They were left with each other, to screaming newborns, and a lifetime of explaining. I deleted the photo. I finally blocked my parents for a while, needing to sever the last link to that chapter. I sold my share of our dream house. He had to buy me out at a loss, used the money to relocate to a new city, and started my own firm, truly alone for the first time. The quiet was no longer lonely, it was peaceful. The twin babies were not my tragedy. They were theirs. My story was no longer about being Mark's fiancée or Clara's sister. It was mine alone to write next. And the first page was blissfully, beautifully blank.